What is going on, everybody? We just witnessed a absolute bludgeoning. The Dallas Cowboys, as Jimmy Johnson once said, how about them Cowboys? 54-19. For those of you that don't know, I'm John Middlekauff. This is the 3 and Out podcast. Make sure you subscribe down below. Also, the Volumes YouTube channel. You better subscribe to that. All of our content can be found here. All of my content can be found here on the 3 and Out podcast. Make sure you subscribe. And let's dive into some weekend football. You know, Sunday Night Football is the #1 show in America for a reason. It typically has the best games, right? Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Mahomes. I mean, it's a star-studded event. You usually don't sign up for, I was going to say Al Michaels, but Al left, Chris. So Tirico and Collinsworth for 54-19. That was, we'll get into Indy in a second. Let's start with Dallas. It's pretty clear the Eagles, who are rolling, are going to be the #1 seed. Dallas is now playing for seeding as a wild card, and with the Giants and Washington tying, they're going to be the 5th seed. But, Dallas was a playoff team last year. It was pretty clear early this season was going to be a playoff team this year. To me, we're judging them like, can they make a run? Because last year, thought they had a pretty good team too, and then the Niners beat them in the first round as like a 5-point favorite at home. It was unacceptable. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing. Dak didn't play that well. McCarthy, the team, the penalties, their defense, I wouldn't say overrated, but it didn't show up in that game when they needed it the most. Tony Pollard clearly wasn't what he is now. This team that I've watched this year, obviously tonight against Indy, but just start to finish, is a better team. And obviously they're a defensive-led team with one really good running back, and Zeke, and Dak's solid. But Dak, we all know at this point, high-level guy, solid starting quarterback. We could argue how much he should be making, whatever. But you can win with a guy like that if you stack the team. And to me, when I watch their defense, Dallas is going to have to win if they're going to make a run in the playoffs. And I believe they can. They have a really, really good team. And when you have really reliable running backs, a physical offense, and a high-level excellent defense, you can make things happen in the playoffs. This is not, to me, this year's team is better than last year's team. And I think one thing when you watch their defense, their team speed is fantastic. We all know Micah Parsons, right? The defensive player of the year is basically a 2-horse race. Micah Parsons versus Nick Bosa. Both guys, elite guys. If they were free agents, they'd get quarterback money. It's stupid how good they are. But when you watch the other players on Dallas's defense, to me, the team speed top to bottom, and your linebacking play, typically the speed of your defense, you really feel it that way. And I feel especially their DBs as well, this is a defense that can make a run in the playoffs. And then offensively, I was always a Amari Cooper guy. I still am. I think he's a solid player. But there is a little bit of a softness to Amari. And clearly Amari was their best wide receiver for years when he was on the Cowboys. You remove him, it does feel like they've become a little more balanced without Amari. They've become a little more CD heavy. Now Gallup's back. Tony Pollard has emerged as a star. They just feel like a well-balanced operation. Now, ultimately, it's going to come down to 2 people. Can Dak play well enough, not turn the ball over in the playoff games? And can Mike McCarthy coach well? And when I say that, have the team prepared, no penalties, be buttoned up. I mean, last year against the 49ers in that playoff game, every other play was an offsides by the defensive lineman. It was Randy Gregory, line up 3 inches on the other side. And if talent is not their issue, effort has not been their issue. I'd say this year, focus has not been their issue, right? Dak got hurt. They did not skip a beat. Depth has not been their issue. That is a really good team. This is a team, to me, that can make noise in the NFC. And we'll get to the NFC. It's pretty wide open because the best team in the NFC is going to be the Cowboys are not going to be intimidated by the Eagles. That doesn't mean they are as good as the Eagles, but they will look at them like an equal. They will look at them knowing that they can beat them. Whether they do or not, they obviously play one more time this season in Dallas. And then, it's not inconceivable that the NFC Championship is Eagles-Cowboys. I'll promise you this. If that's the game, that'll do some big-time television ratings. I've been impressed with Dallas all season long. Was really impressed with them tonight. Just in the way, do you know what a good team does to a shitty team? They kicked the living crap out of them. And 54-19, honestly, it's not even that score. It's hard to even believe that. How many NFL games over the last 10 years does a team score over 50 points? That's pretty crazy. Very, very impressive win by Dallas. I'm not going to break down the Indianapolis Colts. Not only do I not care, they don't deserve it. They stink. They're a boring watch. They're a hard watch. Matt Ryan, after that first start against the Raiders, has come back to earth. I mean, just throw a couple terrible interception today. I mean, I wouldn't say the game in the balance, but he's a shell of himself. He's a player whose arrow's pointing down. And more than likely, if you tell me he retires after the season, I would believe you. Colts are not any good. But the Colts don't have a coach. Obviously, Jeff Saturday's their interim coach. You saw if you watched the Cowboy game long enough, there was a clip, what looked like Chris Ballard was going to head down to the field after they started getting their ass kicked. There was a story that came out today that that teams are doing their due diligence on Jim Harbaugh. And I think the verbatim in the article was like, he would be interested if the right spot and if it made sense. And Jim Harbaugh is in the Ring of Honor for the Indianapolis Colts. Jim Harbaugh you don't need to do due diligence on Jim Harbaugh. When you sign Jim Harbaugh as your head coach, you win. Whether you're at the University of San Diego, whether you're at Stanford, whether you're the 49ers, or whether you're the Michigan Wolverines. You know why? Because Jim Harbaugh is a winner. His shittiest seasons at Michigan were 8-5. His shittiest season in the NFL was 8-8. All the guy does is win. And now that he has Michigan rolling, back-to-back playoffs. And let's face it, when you look at the brackets, he's probably going to be in the national championship with a chance to avenge his loss to Georgia. Now, I think Georgia's better than his team, but I don't think it's inconceivable that Jim Harbaugh wins a national championship this season. And the Indianapolis Colts, remember, years ago, I think before they hired Chris Ballard, when Ryan Grigson was still their general manager, and they were thinking about firing Chuck Pagano, they had sniffed around at Jim Harbaugh, and they were sniffing around at John Gruden. Their owner, who's a little bit of a whack job, I mean, let's just call a spade, has had these grand visions before. And he kind of did 5 years ago when he told Chris to go hire Josh McDaniels, and it blew up in their face. And I'm not saying Josh McDaniels is Jim Harbaugh or John Gruden in terms of fame, but that would have been a really, really big hire at the time. And to me, the Colts make a lot of sense for Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh in Indianapolis, I mean, if I'm Jim Irsay in the Indianapolis Colts, I offer him the job. Whenever the season ends, whenever he's comfortable talking to me, there is no due diligence that needs to take place. It's Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Trent Williams. Those guys are on the free agent market. You don't do due diligence. You just offer them the amount of money that you hope they accept. Aaron Judge right now is a free agent. No one's doing any due diligence on Aaron Judge. When LeBron's a free agent, you just sign him if you have the opportunity. There's no due diligence to be done. Now, the question would be, if Jim Harbaugh would not only be interested, but would accept your job, would he work with Chris Ballard? Because I would imagine he has a general manager that he would want to work with. And that would probably say bye-bye to Chris Ballard. And me personally, I think Chris Ballard's pretty good at the job. I think he's done a really good job over the years of drafting, signing, trading, making good moves as general manager. But when you don't win and your team eventually sucks, even if you're good at your job, you get put in a position by the owner where he's looking at different coaches that you might not be your choice. And a coach, if he's willing to take the job, might not want to work with you. So to me, Jim Harbaugh and the Indianapolis Colts makes too much sense. I think the only question is, one, would he take the job? Two, if he did take the job, does that mean bye-bye for Chris Ballard? But we're no longer breaking down Indianapolis Colts games. They suck too much. I would say the big news today, clearly, well, two quarterbacks got hurt. As of now, I don't have concrete information. I don't think anyone does on Lamar's injury. They've won games before with Tyler Huntley, who is pretty crazy. I didn't think Tyler Huntley was that good in college. Yet when I watch him, I like him more in the NFL than I did when he played at Utah. But if Lamar has a serious injury, obviously that's a major story. But Jimmy Garoppolo broke his foot, out for the season. And I don't know if I viewed the 49ers as the favorite in the NFC, because I think the Eagles have earned that they've played the best start to finish, and, they have a complete team. But the 49ers could go to Philly and beat them with Jimmy Garoppolo. That goes out the window. I saw a social clip. I think Colin recorded after that game, and listen, they're going to make the playoffs, but they're no longer a Super Bowl contender. And I tend to agree. Even though the way the 49ers play is not necessarily dependent on a quarterback like the Bengals, like the Bills, like the Chiefs. Hell, today, Brock Purdy played a Jimmy-like game. 25 completions, threw a couple touchdowns, but it's difficult. I don't see any way, any circumstance that they could win multiple playoff games with Brock Purdy. If they did, it'd be one of the most incredible accomplishments I've ever seen. So that opens up, which, let's face it, was already a wide open NFC. The Eagles dismantle Tennessee, win easily. They're going to be the 1 seed. The NFC is going to go through Philly. And because of the wild card rules now, only one team gets the bye. They're only going to have to win 2 games. And depending on how this plays out, they already have a 2-game lead on Dallas, that they might have nothing to play for week 18. So who knows? Maybe they rest their guys for a couple weeks, and that's backfired before. Time will tell. But we all have to agree at this point, they're the clear favorite. The NFC is going to run through Philly, and now with the 49ers gone, it's basically, to me, a 3-team race. You have the Philadelphia Eagles, who really good. You have the Minnesota Vikings, which I got to say, I was impressed today. One, I think the Jets are pretty good. I think the Jets, defensively, they're fantastic. I didn't realize how hard-hitting their safeties were. I knew how good their defensive line was. I think their linebackers are fantastic. They were crushing people today. I was I was really, really impressed with the Jets. On the road, down early, came fighting back, had a chance with Mike White multiple times to win that game. Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, even when he has an incompletion, even when Cousin misses him, I go, God damn, that guy's good. He is probably non-quarterback, top 5 player in the NFL. Their running game, we know how good Dalvin Cook is. Madison, the running back from Boise State, he's been in the league a while now, is fantastic. So they have multiple runners. We know how good their wide receivers are. Cousins has played much better. Their defense was making plays today. Now, granted, it was against Mike White. I think Minnesota's really good. And more than likely, they're going to be the 2 seed because obviously Dallas, if they don't win the division, they're just automatic wild card. That's a tough place to play. So if you're the 2 seed, you basically have 2 home games until you have to face Philly. I think between them and Dallas, just given one problem for Dallas is they're going to have to win 3 straight road games to win the NFC, right? If they're the 5 seed, you got to go 5-4. Now, they're going to play Tampa. We'll see Tampa play Monday Night Football. I think Tampa stinks. Dallas going to be favored in that game. Should win that game, even though it'd be a little tight playing Tom Brady, but whatever. Then you probably got to play Minnesota. Then you got to play Philly. That is 3 tough. Tom Brady, Minnesota, Philly. That's a tough road. I saw it last year with the 49ers. 3 straight road games. It's just very, very difficult to do. But to me, those are the only 3 teams that can win the NFC. Philly, obviously Minnesota, and Dallas. And honestly, you could argue that Dallas is every bit, if not a little bit better than Minnesota. I actually trust probably Dak a little bit more than Cousins, even though I was watching today go, I've given Cousins a lot of shit over the years. He's vastly improved. He's much better than the quarterback than I know that I'm guilty of, the way that a lot of us talk about the guy. Because for whatever reason, we don't want to like him, even though he kind of become a little bit looser, a little bit funnier. Obviously, the videos this year on the plane. But you know what I mean? I just think it's our natural inclination to not really like Cousins. Where Dak, I think our natural inclination is kind of to root for Dak, even though we watch him, we go, I don't know how good he is, but I want this guy to succeed. It's bizarre. Even though both of them on the rankings are kind of the same guy. They're both 9-10 or 10-11, but their teams are really good. And it's who do you trust more? Mike McCarthy, who's been doing it longer, or Kevin O'Connell, who's never done. But Philly, clear favorite, and then those teams, none of the other teams can win it. You cannot win the NFC if Brock Purdy is your coach, or your quarterback. I'm sorry, Giants in Washington. I no longer take you guys that seriously. You guys tied. And I never took either one of them. Honestly, I still don't think the Giants can make the playoffs, but I actually factored in them to lose this game. I think they play the Eagles next week, and then they play the Commanders again in Washington. So we'll see. The Giants could go bye-bye really quick. And Seattle somehow is sneaky still alive. Seattle won the day. last minute drive, game-winning touchdown to DK. Then they play Carolina. Then on a short week at home, they get Brock Purdy and the 49ers. So who knows? The Seattle technically could still win the division. I think we all agree that they are not an NFC, a team that can win the NFC. They're not. They can't. Though they do have a top pick because the Broncos keep losing. I think they have the 4th pick in the draft right now. I think the Lions have the 3rd pick, and the Broncos are giving the Seattle Seahawks the 4th pick. That is currently the Bears 2 and the Texans number 1. The other game I watched a lot of today because it was on. I had 2 TVs going. The Bengals Chiefs game, and we talked about this game coming into the week. This was a fantastic game, and every time I looked up, it lived up to the billing. The physicality of the game, the big plays in the game. I mean, Mahomes like helicopter touchdown, the forced fumble on Kelsey. The Bengals are really good. I mean, I am blown away by the character of the team. Like, they were 0-2. It felt like, God, maybe it's just kind of a letdown season. They'll just be like a 9-win team, and they have battled their ass off, and now they're in position to win that division. I didn't watch much of Ravens-Broncos. Actually, I didn't watch any because I wouldn't want any human being to watch Ravens-Broncos. I look up, it's 3-0. I'm like, who's watching this game? What a terrible football game. Obviously, the Ravens were able to win with Huntley once, Lamar went out. But like the Bengals to me are better than the Ravens. And obviously Joe Burrow is a big reason why. And what did we talk about coming in? Well, what was so cool about these conference rivalries is like Josh Allen and Mahomes is a legit rivalry. It's not quite at the level, obviously Brady and Manning had so long, like a decade and a half worth of multiple games every single year. And now we're getting that with Mahomes and Allen. Kind of sneaky starting to get that with Cincinnati and Kansas City. Cincinnati has beat them 3 straight times. And today, to win a game when you are losing going into the 4th quarter, and that one thing about Cincinnati, we talked, Jamar Chase early on in that game was like, geez, is this guy Jerry Rice? Dominating. The Chiefs came out really slow. They were up 14-3 like that, the Bengals. And for a split second, it's like, are they going to win this game like 35-20 and just kind of kick their ass? Obviously, Kansas City came storming back. Cincinnati's defense is really, really solid. I think we all, and I'm a casual, like I'm not watching every single snap, every single week of Cincinnati. But if you just talk to someone at a bar or talk to a buddy on the phone about the Bengals, what are you going to talk to them about, right? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mixon. You talk about the offense. Really, their defense is the reason they have been so competitive this year. Their defense in the second half of these games, Lou, I don't want to screw up his last name, Italian guy, he's doing a really, really good job as a defensive coordinator. And to have back-to-back years of beating this team when you were losing to them, right? Like last year, they were getting their ass kicked in the first half, came storming back and win. This year, they're losing, going in 24-17 in the 4th quarter. And to come back and win that game, that is a massive, you could argue that's the biggest win of the season so far. Because you could go, well, the Bills beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. True, but the Bills have beat them before. Now, this isn't the playoffs, but the Bengals, I don't want to say that we thought they weren't real because clearly they've been playing really well. But to win that game today, I didn't gamble on the game. If I did, I would have bet on the Chiefs. And I said it, I thought the Chiefs would come out guns blazing. And not only did they not come out guns blazing, they were behind early on. The Bengals were the team that showed up to play. The Bengals, I'm blown away how good they are. And I think it speaks to, obviously, the quarterback. I mean, he's an incredible player. And I need to do a better job of putting Burrow when I say Mahomes and Allen. I need to. Because if you're going to put Allen with Mahomes, it's not like, what has Allen actually accomplished, right? Now, it wasn't his fault that they lost last year in the second round. He threw 5 touchdowns. The defense blew it. But I just put him there. So if I'm going to just say Mahomes and Allen, I have to put Joe Burrow there. And I think we all have to agree, like, something's off with the Ravens. And Lamar, early on in the season, his first month was awesome. He was kicking everyone's ass. Hasn't quite been the same. Now he's banged up. Like, do the Ravens have the best quarterback in that division? I think we'd all agree. I would take Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson. And I like Lamar Jackson. But that's going to be a problem for the Ravens' big picture moving forward. Like, they don't have the best player in their division. A guy that won the MVP like 3 years ago. A guy that took the league by storm. And now the Bengals have the best quarterback in the division. He's like 25, 26 years old, going nowhere and kicking everyone's ass. So if I'm a Bengal fan, I'd be pretty fired up, headed to work, or you fire into my home office tomorrow. And last but not least, Deion Sanders. I have so much respect for what this guy just did. I remember years ago, Marshall Faulk wanted to be a coach. Remember, he's like, I want to be a coach. They're like, well, go work for a team. He's like, no, I want to be a head coach. Like, bro, you gotta start as like a running back coach or something. Hell, even an offensive coordinator. No, I only want to be the head coach. It's like, well, you're not going to get an NFL job. No one's going to hire you to just be an NFL head coach. And that's just the way the world works, right? Everyone freaked out about Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday got 8 games. He's never going to be a head coach in the NFL ever again. If he ever wants to do it, he's going to have to be an offensive line coach. And I would guess, more than likely, he's not going to do that. Could be wrong. Who knows? Deion Sanders, one of the best players in the history of the NFL. And for pound athlete, you could argue he's a top 5 athlete in the history of America, right? Baseball, football. Even he said if he would have focused more on baseball, he would have been better. I tend to agree. He obviously is, I think many consider the greatest shutdown corner of all time. Just an all-time great player. And he went to Jackson State. I got news for you. When people on Twitter act like nobody has watched them play a snap, nobody is watching his team play, except like Portnoy and maybe some of the Barstool guys that go hang out with him. Nobody's watched his team play. Nobody of his stature would have done that. Like, I am so blown away that he went there, did that, and then he had success. And then, like last year, he was interviewing for TCU, Colorado State. He was willing to take other jobs, right? Like, he wasn't just doing this to kind of screw around, lower level, coach's kid, and then just take off. Like, no, he really wants to be a head coach. Sniffing around Auburn, interviewed with Colorado. Actually, I think Colorado basically just offered him the job. And I was like, listen, I love West Coast football. I root for West Coast football. I think that's a terrible job. It's god-awful. There's no recruiting in the state. The conference now, Washington's rolling, Oregon's rolling, Lincoln's now at USC. Even Chip at UCLA is solid. Kyle Whittingham's the best coach of the group. Utah's kicking ass and taking names. Hell, even Arizona's on the come up. Colorado, I wouldn't have touched that with a 10-foot pole if I was just a random coach that all my money was just becoming a coach. Like, Deion doesn't need to do this financially. Yet he took the job. So he started at an HBCU, kicked everyone's ass. It sounds way sexier now that he did it, and I know a couple other people did it. Rich Rod did it. I think Eddie George did it. No one was doing that before Deion did it. And then he shook everything up by landing the dude that was supposed to go to Florida State. And now he went to Colorado. Like, if he had accepted the Oregon job, I know he didn't get the TCU job because Sonny Dykes said those would have made sense. Like, you could win at Auburn. You could win at TCU. If Florida State would have hired him, obviously he went there. You could win at Florida State. I don't know if you can win at Colorado. He doesn't give a fuck. He ain't scared of shit. I just watched for 7 minutes him talking to the team. You could see all these dudes. He was basically telling them, like, I'm going to cut some of you. He approaches it like an NFL guy. And here's the thing. In college football now, besides like Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, and Kirby Smart, a small group of guys, most coaches are scared to, like, get on guys. And I've heard this talking to my friends that coach at different schools, because if you coach a guy hard, he might just transfer. And I think part of it is a lot of coaches, unless you have a lot of pelts on the wall, and most coaches don't, you're just, there's somewhat of an insecurity now that you don't control. Like, a guy can leave at any moment. You watch Deion Sanders talks to the kids. You follow Deion Sanders on social media. He ain't scared of any of this. You want to transfer? See ya. Deuces. He is going to go there. Now, here's the thing. Can Deion manage a game? Can Deion timeouts at the end of halves? I don't know. I got news for you. No one knows, because no one's watched him coach there. And he's had a better team clearly than the teams he's been playing. He went undefeated this year. We're going to find out now, but he's going to get talent there. And what did I say about college football last week? It's much more just to be competitive, because he's not going to be trying to win 11, 12 games right off the bat. But if he can just get to 500, I mean, this team, I'm pretty sure they just won 1 game. They have been one of the worst programs in the country for the last 4 or 5 years. They were a joke. If he were to go 6-6 in year one, that'd be an incredible accomplishment. If he were to win 8 or 9 games within 2 years, he might, when they fire Sark, he might just be the Texas head coach. Now, I have some questions like who is going to be his offensive coordinator? Who is going to be his defensive coordinator? His son is going to be the quarterback, even though he said, I think he pointed at him at his press conference, and then he kind of joked. He's like, well, he's got to earn the job. His son's going to be the quarterback. I don't know how good this guy is. Like, you do got to play Utah. You do got to play Oregon. You do got to play Washington. It's going to be fascinating to watch this. But the Pac-12, which, and rightfully so, got drugged through the mud. Everyone and their mother that follows football made fun of it. Finally feels like it has a little momentum, which is ironic because USC and UCLA are about to leave. Washington's good, like I said. Oregon's good. Obviously, Lincoln Riley. Utah's kicking everyone's ass, and I think they're going to win the Rose Bowl when they beat Penn State. And now they got Deion Sanders, who, when I watched him talk to his team, you know the thing I respect about him most? It's just he cares. Like, football means a lot to him. Like, he really wants to do this. Like, this is not just some passion project that he's screwing around with. This means something to him. And this is why so many former players that get, Deion was a little bit before the huge money, but Deion's still pretty damn rich. That they don't need to do this because there is it takes a lot of work, especially college football, recruiting, the transfer portal, dealing with coaches, dealing with administrators. It's hard. And then, during the season, like, you either win or lose. And first year, Deion, who knows? Their team might not be that good. They might lose. You might get people making fun. He doesn't care. Like, the guy's confidence he's probably one of the more confident individuals in the history of sports. But it's going to be a fascinating just thing to watch. Because if he can resurrect this football program, he might be the best player. If he has success at Colorado, best player to ever coach, at least in my generation. I know back in the day, like Dick LeBeau was a Hall of Famer, but like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady's, Darrelle Revis's. I mean, think of all the Hall of Fame level players over the last 20 years that made all this money. They never coaching. Not a Power 5 program or the NFL. It's too much work. It's not worth the headache when you have that much money in the bank. Primetime doesn't give a crap.